I locked myself in a room until I became a profitable trader. Almost 6 years ago, my life looked completely bleak. I was still in university and I was staring down a soul-crushing 9 to 5 future that I really didn't want. I was living in a shabby ground floor apartment in Edinburgh, which is the main city in Scotland, with a serious spider infestation. Now, this was our actual entrance hall into the building. It kind of looks like out of a horror movie, and it kind of felt like one when you were going through, but that's all we could afford at the time. Then I discovered day trading. I thought in less than a year that I would be on yachts, I'd have Lambos like everyone advertised on YouTube. Instead, it became the brutal reality of being locked in my room for 12 to 15 hours daily, glued to charts until 5 a.m. This was my setup at the time. At the time also, I was quite into skateboarding, so I had a little skateboarding deck. But it was just an IKEA desk with a single monitor, I think it was 1080p, my computer that I'd had since I was a kid, and pretty much I was just grinding every single day, learning about everything I could about trading. Now, since then, it has completely changed my life. This was my last month's results, and I'll also have a new video coming out around my current month's results. And then this was also the results from trading one crypto inefficiency on one particular wallet, so it was about 50,000. Now, the start wasn't glamorous in any way. There were no fancy monitors, as you just saw, or fancy trading desks that you see on Instagram. It was just determination, market obsession, and a lot of instant ramen from Lidl. It's one of the cheapest supermarkets in the EU. But that simple, focused life was the foundation for how I've now made over 6 figures from trading, achieving more than what 10 years of my projected 9 to 5 career would have. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how I did it, plus some key lessons along the way, while also going through memory lane for myself to kind of see how far I've progressed over the past 6 years or so. Now, the first one, once I delete this, is find your main inefficiency. For me, this was small caps. This is kind of the riskiest corner of equity markets. And small caps is where you can either blow up your account in a single trade, or you can sometimes forex it in a single week if you're using a bit of leverage. Now, here was actually one of my trades from early on. This was on Trade Zero. It was a kind of small brokerage where you didn't have to have PDT if you were obviously abroad. So that's how I was able to trade with a small account. I think at the time it was about $2,000 to $3,000 if I'm not mistaken. Now, this sounds like the perfect place for a new trader looking to escape their potential bleak future with one lucky trade. And at the time, that's completely what I was thinking. Now, what I didn't know is that during this time, I was actually fortunate enough to stumble upon an actual market inefficiency, which was small caps, which was when you're shorting 50% plus gappers with less than about 500 million market cap, that did change over time, you would have a very high close red percentage, meaning that a lot of those tickers, if you did short them around the open or on a particular pop, for example, they would actually close red, meaning you would make money on the short side. Now, here was some data from back in the day. I think this was in 2021 maybe, or 2022. I just found it from one of my old screenshots of my journals. And as you can see here, there was a very high count and a very high percentage likelihood of a red close over that past month. And this was the main inefficiency. Now, at the time, though, I was still a gambler. Make no mistake of that. I really didn't know that I had stumbled across this particular edge. I was just trading something that had been advertised to me in a trading room. There was a trader that was actually trading small caps at the time, and I thought, hey, looks very volatile, looks like a way I could make a decent amount of money with my small amount of capital, and that's why I started trading it. Now, to be frank, I was swinging sides like a complete alcoholic. I had no self-control. Some days I would risk 2% of my account, the next I'd risk 10%, and then 20% when I felt particularly confident about a setup. But obviously, in real terms, I had no idea what actually confident meant. I just felt a bit, more confident about that particular trade, and that's why I was sizing up. Now, over the months, I slowly started to realize this approach was not sustainable in any way. I came dangerously close to blowing up my account several times, and while I was lucky enough to never fully blow it up, I did get very close a couple times. Now, this actually feels quite shameful to talk about nowadays, but it was my reality in the beginning first 2 years or so. And looking back, I was kind of shocked that I survived these early times. So to round up the first lesson is you really want to find your first main inefficiency. Trading isn't really about psychology. It isn't really about, trading levels here and there. It's about having an edge that you can exploit. Now, there are other videos on my channel that go over different types of edges. Technically, you can also do risk premiums. So those are things where you're getting extra return because you're taking on extra volatility risk primarily. But you can check out that video if that's something of interest. Now, the next one, if we delete this real quickly, is you want to discover a scientific approach. This is when kind of everything changed for me, was when I became more scientific about my approach to trading. I started to fully test my strategies, removing that fog of doubt and inaccuracies about how to actually trade them. For the first time, I knew what's the average drawdown going to look like, how much volatility on my equity curve I could actually expect, where should I actually be entering for this particular trade, and the pros and cons of different approaches. Now, every approach in trading, no matter what someone tells you, there's going to be cons and pros to it. Some particular strategies, for example, will have very high win rates, meaning that you'll be able to compound a lot faster, but you'll also then most likely have bigger losses that will take out a good amount of those gains every once in a while, compared to a low win rate strategy where you'll normally make a lot on single winners, but you'll have to withstand very long drawdowns for the most part, and your average drawdown days is going to be quite high. Now, I found this all out from testing my strategies actually historically. So most people would know this as backtesting, but over time, my backtesting became a lot more professional. But in the early days, it was scrappy Python code and Excel of just pulling data from different sources. Now, luckily, I had been actually coding since around 2010, and it was actually how I made my first dollars online running Minecraft servers back in the day. I would have never expected that would have given me an edge in trading, because a lot of the earlier videos that I consumed around trading was a lot about the discretionary approach. So not about having data behind it or anything like that, mainly primarily about your intuition or your experience or watching different setups. But once I discovered you could become more scientific about it, and you could actually have data backing up your decisions, my performance completely began to improve. Now, by the end of the second year, I was finally in the green. While it wasn't much, it was beyond satisfying. It took me almost 2 years of sweat, tears, and I'm actually meaning that literally. There was a couple times I did cry just because of how much money I'd lost at the time. So once I finally had a year where I was, overall green on the year, it wasn't much, at least in terms of like an actual living, but you can kind of imagine the clip of the recent winner of the Masters. If you haven't watched that video of him taking the walk after winning, definitely recommend it. It's one of the most transparent and honest kind of reactions to putting your blood, sweat, and tears into something for a very long period of time, and it finally pays off. Now for the next one, if we delete this, is scale what works. After I finally had a green year, this was really just the beginning of my journey. I had a lot more to learn, and ultimately I wanted to automate my entire approach to trading as well. Now, by scaling and actually automating my trading, this got me to the 6-figure level and will hopefully get me to the 7-figure level in the next couple of years. I now trade fully automated with futures markets while still trading smaller size on small caps, as that was my original inefficiency, and I'd still like to keep it going in case it ever pops up a lot more. And I'm now also expanding into a lot larger positions into crypto through the benefit of having a network of traders now that I know and being exposed to that there are actually some amazing inefficiencies in crypto, and it's been kind of stupid of me for not targeting it for a very long period of time, but I'm finally getting back to it, and that's where I'm trying to exploit a lot of edges as well now. Now, to give you some of my key lessons from the first 2 years is I want to go over that progress is not linear in any way. Some months you'll feel like you're getting nowhere, and then suddenly everything clicks, and that cycle repeats many times. Over the 6 years or so now, I've had many times where I thought, hey, I think I figured it out, and then maybe 4 months later, I'll run into a huge roadblock that makes me think, hey, do I have to quit trading? Now, over time, the severity of those, decreases a lot because you feel more confident in yourself, you have more data behind yourself of how much you've been trading, for example, and you understand more of the core principles of trading. But don't ever assume that once you hit, your first profitable year, it's just going to be smooth sailing from there. It really is not linear in any way. Now, next is tracking data is a non-negotiable. You can't improve what you don't measure, and you want to record everything. Now, if you want to be a discretionary trader, then this applies to like journaling and recording your trades and going over your own trades. But if you want to be more systematic around it and actually maybe even automate your trading, then this is obviously going along the lines of having data to back up your particular strategy historically, and then doing tons of different tests like robustness testing, which could include Monte Carlo simulations, parameter sensitivity, etc. If you actually want to learn more about those of how to be more systematic, check out the first link in the description. I've just created something where I put all my knowledge around creating systematic strategies into one place. Now, next is simplicity beats complexity. My most profitable systems are definitely not the most complex ones. They are focused on exploiting a key inefficiency or taking advantage of a particular risk premium. And then lastly, look at those ahead of you. Finding other serious traders to discuss ideas or be exposed to new things in the market saved me an incredible amount of time. It is always worth the investment, in my opinion. While it can feel daunting to pay for something, most of the time, the ROI on that, if you think about it long term, is just completely insane. I've had many calls with people where I've had to pay a decent amount of money to have their time for maybe an hour or a couple of hours, but the small things they say here and there can save me, potentially a year, and you never really know the impact of those until you think back on how those particular decisions or pieces of information changed your particular journey. The next one I actually want to add here is that trading takes a lot longer than you think it will. Me saying 2 years here sounds like it went by in a flash. It really didn't. There was a lot of days I really did contemplate about potentially quitting, but normally the next day afterwards, I always had the same conversation with myself. I had the conversation of, well, if I don't do this, what else am I going to do that I could leverage and make this amount of money? And at least in my particular career of what I was going after, it was mainly accounting and then potentially investment banking. Those are very difficult things to scale up as high as you can actually with trading. The leverage on how much money you can make trading is astronomical, but it is also one of the most difficult things I've ever personally done. And that's about it.